Okay, guys, I'm going to do a quick video on chapter 10 so that we can fill in all the little gaps in the sheets. There's like 3 or 4 sheets dealing with chapter 10 material. Maybe it's just 2 sheets. And midway through the packet, you have chapter 10 info, terms, and concepts. I don't know if you can see this. Put it closer. Info, terms, and concepts. And there's about 3 pages worth of material, and there's a lot of blanks in there. I want to get these done tonight, deploy it tonight, Sunday, so that you will have that material and then you can look it over and then maybe do another small video and or maybe a live session on Monday, depending on how it goes, or maybe even later tonight I'll put together another video for the rest of chapter 10. But I want to get you to get this information so you can start going through this material. So we're just going to fill in the gaps, all the little things that we have added notes to put in. All right, or I'm going to preface a little bit more as well. All right, if you look at the red herring at the very bottom of the chapter 10 info, terms, and concepts, just understand that's one that's going to be on the exam. Let me tell you a little bit of how this question goes. Basically, what is a red herring? And a red herring is basically a preliminary prospectus filed by the company with the SEC, usually in connection with the company's IPO, initial public offering. It contains all the relevant information about the investment, and it gives key details about what the security is without the SEC allowing or assessing the offer as a security or not a security. And it has certain risks of those spelled out. And usually these risks are spelled out into red ink, hence the name red herring, not the literary term. Now, he probably says something in the video about stop on this investment, look this over because something's fishy. That's where we get the red herring, the red ink, and the something's fishy. Now, for test questions, it's one of them is a very easy question. It's just simply, you know, what is it? Red sturgeon, blue sturgeon, red herring, blue herring. And it's colors and fish. Red herring is going to be your answer that you're looking for. Now, for a tombstone ad, I left that blank. For a tombstone ad, that's an advertisement appearing in a newspaper or magazine. Typically, you know, just a black and white text. It looks more like a article, so to speak. And we think it's an article, but it turns out to be really a long advertisement. It's got a centered headline, a bunch of number of lines with an ad, usually centered and stuff like that, and it makes it look like more like an article somewhat, rather than an advertisement within a newspaper or a magazine. That has been one little thing that's been on the test, where he just asks what is a tombstone ad and how it relates to SEC. Well, the only way it's going to add, if it's dealing with the SEC and stuff like that, it's an advertisement probably for initial public offering or a stock or something like that. It could be anything ad-wise, but if we're talking about SEC, we're usually talking about investments. At the very bottom of that first page, blue sky laws. Blue sky laws was just another thing that he talks about in class. It is another name for security laws, and this name originated because of the wheat fields and bumper crops located in Kansas. The reason why I want to talk about it, you don't have to really add anything here other than what we talked about with tombstones ad, but you have to add, you don't really have to add anything about blue sky laws. But I wanted to talk about it briefly now because remember we had some states in chapter 9, like Wyoming for the first LLC, Texas for the first LLP. Delaware being the easiest restrictions for a corporation, Connecticut being the first one. You have to now add in Kansas as well for the bumper crops of the wheat fields that originated the idea of the blue sky laws. Now, when you have this stuff on the final, don't get this confused with blue laws from your first exam, also known as Sunday laws. All right, on the next page over, you have Michael Milken. Michael Milken was king of the junk bonds. These are high-risk, high-yield bonds. And he was ratted out by Ivan Boesky and the Peabody Corporation, who had committed insider trading. But to get them a better deal, they ratted out Michael Milken as also committing insider trading. He was found guilty of insider trading. Insider trading is Rule 10b-5, and he was required to pay, and this is where you have to fill in the material, $1.1 billion. $1.1 billion. 200 million of that was restitution to all the people he defrauded, and 200 million of it was fines. So the 1.1 billion, 900 million of it was restitution to the people he harmed, and then 200 million of it went to fines associated to his actions. The Sciarella case, skipping over the Texas Gold Supper, but the Sciarella case is a case where there should have possibly been insider trading, but the courts found him not guilty. And I put, after these 3 pages that you have in the packet, the very next page is a 1-page synopsis over the Sciarella case. He has had this. This is a Tier 2 case dealing with Chapter 10 material. The attachment's there in the packet right next to it and everything like that. But it was found to be not guilty of insider trading, even though probably all the criteria associated are there. All right, the next thing we need to cover in and fill in are the 10K, 10Q, and 8K reports, okay? A 10K report is a comprehensive report filed annually with the SEC. It's filed annually with the SEC and includes all sorts of more details in addition to the company's annual report. More reports contains much more detail than just an annual report that's sent to the shareholders, okay? It's going to include all financial statements, its organizational structure, the major officers, the history, the compensation for all those executives, earnings that made per share, and any relevant data you may have. And it comes out once a year, annually, yearly, okay? And this 10K report, if you've ever had to download like a 50-page Coca-Cola report, for those in like Accounting 209, that is what the 10K report is, okay, filed annually. The 10Q report is filed quarterly, and it's going to be more the income statements, the balance sheets, the financial ratios associated to every 3 months. Now, they come out every 3 months with this audited, unaudited report that basically includes all financial relative information, balance sheets, income statements, and stuff like that. You file them every 3 months, and the 4th one is usually filed as an addendum to the 10K report. So you're going to file 3 10Q reports every year, and the 4th one will be an addendum to the 10K report, just an attachment to it. Now, an 8K report is when something material changes in significance, and what is material is meaning it's going to adversely affect the stock price. That could be something like earnings going up very high or very low. It could be a key employee leaving. It could be a key client lost. So say 40% of your revenue is through a contract with IBM. At the end of the contract, IBM decides they're not going to renew. You've lost 40% of your revenue. You need to notify the SEC immediately, within 4 days, on how 4 business days, about that situation occurring. If a key employee leaves, you need to let them know. So if you give you a storyline and said, Robin, the CEO decides to leave and leave the organization, the 8K report needs to be filed within 4 days, business days, of that occurrence. And that's because it wants to let the market know as quick as possible what's going on with the organization, to where the market can correct itself in terms of the values of the share and stuff like that. 10Q report. 10Q report is nothing. There is no 10Q report. That's why there's nothing to write down in the orange packet there. But if you have 10K, 10Q, 8K, likely the other answer is 10Q, or I'm sorry, 8Q, which is not an answer. So if he says, which of the following do not need to be filed with the SEC at any point in time? Well, yeah, 8Q, because it never needs to be filed. It's nothing really there. But it's likely not going to be an answer. It just sounds good with all the other ones, okay? On the next page over in your packet, I wanted to get these last few things taken care of, is the different scandals we had under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act, also known as the Public Company Accounting Reform and Investors Act, and you need to know the formal name and informal name, not as much as you would say all the ones in labor law, but you still need to know it. It requires auditing and reform on corporate executives, use the CII, Council of Institutional, as an idea and index. It requires a CEO, CFO to sign off on financial documents because it wants to stop corporate scandals from occurring. And these next 4 are the corporate scandals that he might have discussed in the video or in a live lecture if he had one this year. The first one is the Tyco scandal. In the Tyco scandal, you had business executives basically give themselves loans, large amount of loans for lavish vacations if he says something about a $6,000 shower curtain or something like that in the storyline, that is the Tyco scandal. Now, from what I understand, what he does is he asks a question and then he says, what does this situation mimic in terms of the scandals that brought about the Sarbanes-Oxley Act? So the Tyco scandal, where the larger executives were given huge amounts of money, lavish vacations, different things like a $6,000 shower curtain, with no expectation that the money was going to come back to the company. Okay. The Adelphia scandal was where a private company decided to become a publicly traded corporation. They went public. Okay. And the way the business owners under the private company did their business, if they wanted to buy something, they wanted to do something, they would just take the money. It was their money. They could do with it what they wanted as long as they paid their taxes. Well, the problem is once it became a publicly traded corporation, now they had shareholders they had to adhere their guidelines to. But they would continue to take out, like the father's son that was in charge of the Adelphia Communications, took out large amounts of loans, large amount of debts in the corporation, and used that for personal gain. But now the debt was on the company's ledger. Now, in a private company, who cares? That's their business. If they want to put it on there as large amount of debts, that's fine. But that hurts shareholders in a publicly traded corporation, and that is the Adelphia scandal. Now, Enron sounds a little bit similar to Tyco. This is where low interest or no interest loans were given to executives in the expectation that they would never be paid back. So it's basically like an extended bonus for all the leaders of the business with no expectation of it being paid back. Therefore, it's a large amount on the ledgers for the business, and they're never expected to get the money back. Therefore, the shareholders are going to have large sums of money come out of the company with no expectation for it coming back. It lowers the value of the stock. They lose money there. Now, in the WorldCom scandal, for instance, if say Robin was given a loan and said, okay, you have this loan, has to be paid back within 100 years at 0.01% interest. Basically, that loan is never going to be repaid in Robin's lifetime. Why would she have any reason? There's no interest being built. She's going to be dead in 100 years. So why would she care about that loan being repaid? And the executives or the people that give them the loans aren't really expecting it to be paid back as well. That was what was designed as the WorldCom scandal. So you can look at that. And then Enron scandal, I think a lot of people already know that's the accounting where they fudged the numbers in the accounting to create scandal that affected the public's investment of that company as well. And they finally got caught on that. That's a huge accounting scandal. Now, if you want to go and look over these things, like in Wikipedia or something like that, I would look over just the general idea behind it. But the things that I would know for the test purposes is being able to relate if he gives you a story about what scandal that may or may not be similar to. But if he talks about the shower curtains, if he talks about low interest loans never getting paid back, accounting scandals, you need to know that's more specific to the exact storyline itself versus, a mimicking. So note those 4 scandals as well. All right. The Williams Act in 1968 deals with hostile takeovers, or any takeover, but mainly hostile takeovers. I'm going to read over that first part of the Williams Act because it can be big, and then we're going to go over the 4 defenses that are used in a hostile takeover. In the Williams Act, if a company, say there's one company trying to be taken over by another company. So we have A is the targeted company, okay? And B is the acquiring company. So B is trying to take over A. If the company A wants to be taken over, that's what we consider to be a friendly tender offer. No one's really going to care. The Williams Act isn't really going to come into play that much because you're not worried about the takeover. However, if company B is taking over company A and company A doesn't want to be taken over by B, then that is considered by many to be a hostile takeover. All right? Now, under the Williams Act, if there is a takeover, once the acquiring company, the one trying to take it over, has more than 5% of the company's voting stock for the targeted company, they must inform not only the company, but they also must file with the SEC and let them know they're doing it. So they need to inform the company that they're taking over after they receive or get more than 5% of the voting stock. Once that's done, the targeted company then has to notify the SEC whether this is a friendly, we have no problem being taken over, or unfriendly tender offer. If it is an unfriendly tender offer, the takeover is put on hold for 20 days, and the shareholders can make a decision if the acquiring company puts out a bid for more stock at a certain price. The shareholders have 7 days to decide whether or not they're going to accept it. If they accept it, and then later on it's not enough stock, so they say they'll buy it for more stock, those shareholders that sold at the lower price can sell it back and then get it back and then sell it again at the higher price. They can get this best offer made, so to speak. Now, when there is a hostile takeover, if it is an unfriendly tender offer, and what we mean by friendly versus unfriendly is if the targeted company has the board of directors not care whether they get taken over, that is a friendly tender offer. Friendly tender offers don't require any kind of defense. You're not defending yourself from anything. When it is an unfriendly tender offer, that means the board of directors of the targeted company do not want to be taken over. And they do not want to be taken over. It's considered by many to be considered a hostile takeover. And then the Williams Act and all the things come into play. Now, the targeted company has 4 basic defenses. The first one is white knight. A white knight defense is where they sell off the entire company to someone else. So say company B is trying to take over company A. Company A knows it's going to be taken over by B, and say B is a jerk company, an asshole company, and A doesn't want to be sold or be bought out from them or taken over by them. So rather than being bought out or taken over by them in an unfriendly tender offer, they will sell their entire company to, say, company C. Company C being a white knight, so to speak. You find someone good. The acquiring company, the one in the unfriendly tender offer, is really called the dark knight. So now we have someone, company B is trying to take over company A. Company A finds company C to take its complete business over to avoid B taking it over. So all you're doing is, you know you're going to get taken over. You find someone that you would like to have you take you over, rather than some say asshole to take you over. That is a white knight. You lose your business at least to a friendlier business that takes you over. Maybe you can keep your jobs from key personnel and stuff like that. Scorched earth is slightly similar though. Scorched earth is slightly similar than white knight. However, if the reason why the company is being targeted for a hostile takeover is maybe because they have one division or one product that the acquiring company wants so bad that if they sell off that piece of the business, then they won't try to take over their company. So say, for instance, company A makes great widgets, whatever the widget is. Company B, the acquiring company, wants those widgets in its arsenal. So they're willing to buy up the entire company A in a hostile takeover because they want those widgets, okay? They want the widgets. They're willing to take over all the other products they make that may not be as good. They want the widgets. Here's the thing. If we use that white knight, that first one I talked about, basically to avoid being taken over by the assholes because of their widgets, they sell the entire company to another one, company C. They sell it all off. However, if they're trying to use scorched earth, they know they want the widgets. They know that's the only reason they want to take them over. We're going to sell the division of the widgets to another company, company C again. Now we have valuable assets gone, but we keep the company for ourselves minus some valuable assets. Now company B no longer wants company A anymore. So what do? They disregard, they don't even try to do the hostile takeover anymore. So they are able to defend themselves by taking away the valuable pieces of the business rather than the entire business. Now, the next two are Pac-Man and Poison Pill. Pac-Man defense is basically when the targeted company uses its reserves, its capital, to go ahead and try to buy up the company that's trying to take it over. So, hey, the company B is trying to take over company A. A says, screw you, uses its money, its capital reserves, and tries to take over company B on its own. So it's a reverse hostile takeover, so to speak. You're trying to buy, you buy up 5% of my voting stock, screw that, I'm going to buy up 5% of your voting stock, and we're going to have a reverse hostile takeover. We're fighting each other. That's the Pac-Man defense. If you remember the Pac-Man, the video game, whatever iteration it is that you see now, it's where you're being chased. by the ghost, and then all of a sudden you eat one of the ducks, and now you're chasing the ghost as well. Pac-Man defense. Now after you eat the duck, you're using your capital to go after them. A poison pill is basically anything to prevent or discourage attempts of a hostile takeover by using a tactic that is going to make it hard for them to take it on. It's usually going to be something that is going to be unfavorable for the acquiring firm to take on, i.e. it could be more debt. It could be golden parachutes where you, in the event of a hostile takeover, the end of a takeover or the business is sold, then all the key employees get a huge severance package or huge bonus, okay? If they get a 3-year severance package or they get a $5 million bonus if the company gets taken over, then not only do you have to buy the company, but then to get rid of all those key employees and put yours in there, you're going to have to go ahead and spend out maybe 60, 70 more $million, okay, just to get rid of those key employees because they have golden parachutes. If you issue more stock to raise it to where they have to get more stock in order to get enough votes to buy up the company, that would be something that would be a poison pill. If you take on more debt, okay, to make it a high debt on your company, maybe they're not attractive anymore. Anything that's financially able to make it more expensive for the acquiring company to buy up the target company would probably fall under the poison pill. All right, that is all the material that we need to fill in there. We got the tombstone ads, 10K, 10Q, 8K, all the different things. We got the red herring. So we've done all that stuff. I'm going to do a slight video a little later on some of those key terms and give some examples. But I wanted you to get that packet done by tonight so that you can have a full day to practice and study. I'm going to probably put together another 25-30-minute video, talk about the end of the chapter questions as well from chapter 10, although I think those are way too easy once again. And we're going to go over some key terms in there. But you have a lot of that, all of that information on those first 3 pages can pretty much answer a lot of your questions. Now, the one thing I do want to go over in the other video that we're going to have later, or at least maybe even live, is the insider trading versus short swing trading, which is at the very bottom of that 3 pages worth of material. Okay, so we'll talk about that in the second video. We'll probably talk about the difference between the Securities Exchange Act of 34 and the Securities Act of 33 as well. But all the little other key terms we went over just now. So there's about 5 or 6 things I'm going to go over in another video. One of them being insider trading versus short swing trading. And then we'll also deal with the information associated to the back of the study guide. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you have any feedback, you can give me on the videos. The one thing I've noticed is the computer that I'm using doesn't have that great of a camera. So I'm trying to see if I can use another person's camera for the next one, either via Zoom or better videos for the future. Okay, I should have another one deployed by Monday morning, if not late tonight. So be looking for it on the Wicked Good Tutoring YouTube, because all of them will be there. Once again, email me, text me if you have any questions about any of the packet.